Welcome back to the Chris Barr series. Super excited that you're still here. We started with Chris Barr, not knowing much about ETA or the journey, but just really excited. He picked out his dream business and we got him to a point. He's got himself to a point where he's gotten under LOI and is now in the due diligence process. In this episode, we dig into due diligence, we dig into the types of due diligence, and we really deep dive this deal from a diligence level. So really neat stuff. Stick around, like and comment, and enjoy. Welcome back to Jackquisitions. We have Chris Barr on today. This is, I think, Chris Barr episode 6.
Back again, yeah, we're still at it, man.
So really pumped to have you here. It's actually been, we recorded a lot of things fast up front, and then it's been a solid couple months since we've talked last because you've been just in the thick of it. So I think last time we talked, you had just signed a LOI, or they had just signed an LOI. So you went under contract and you just started hitting DD.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate the patience. It's been good to have a few months for me to really just kind of sink my teeth into DD because, as I was mentioning, it's pretty all consuming. So yeah, I've been going through the process, the ups, the downs, the twists, the turns. Made a ton of progress. Probably not quite as far along as I would like or the sellers, but from what I'm gathering, this is a bit par for the course when it comes to small business acquisitions. I mean, there again, DD takes a lot of twists and turns, tends to drag a bit farther than both parties intend on. So been pretty good of avoiding deal fatigue. The relationships between myself and the sellers is still fantastic. So I think that has taken us a long way for, wanting to continue working together through all the little hiccups and bumps that we've experienced along.
Well, I mean, let's start with, so like due diligence usually has a time frame put onto it. It's usually like 30 days or 60 days. I mean, Jen, I think the norm on small businesses is between 45 and 60. What did you have to go for an extension, or what's it like from a contractual point of view?
Yeah, we've had to go through an extension, and then also, it's based on receipt of all documents. And these guys, like, I'm assuming a lot of small businesses out there are not quite so organized and don't have all these documents specifically on hand. So that's a card we've been able to wave of, hey, listen, when has DD started? Because when did the documents get over? So I think being able to use that to kind of extend the timeline has been helpful. And again, I think relationship has gone a long way there. They really want me as a buyer, and I really like the business. So I think that us both wanting to work together has made the flexibility of that timeline pretty good.
Sweet. So let's, if we can, like I said to you off the air, I understand due diligence is a very tricky beast, as well as being under LOI and NDA is a tricky beast.
Right.
So there are certain things we can talk about, and there are certain things we can't talk about. But just in general, to the DD process. So you started. I'm guessing you said you have an accountant. Your accountant sent a slew of questions from a financial side. Is that kind of where you started, and are you doing QOV? Like, walk us through what at least you wanted or your idea of DD was.
Yeah, the way I kind of always conceptualized it was you have basically 3 main pillars to due diligence. You have the financial side, you have the legal side, and the operations side. So once financial docs and legal docs, and you kind of get that big initial Dropbox dump, in your lap. Right out of the gate, I was like, I'm going to be the most sophisticated and diligent buyer there is. I'm going to go through every tax return, every credit card statement, every insurance policy, and quickly realized there's a reason I have a team. Like, let me delegate. Let the pros handle what they handle. And so that was a big learning curve of a lot of emotional distress in the front end, feeling like I'm in over my head, and then kind of a sigh of relief to realize that I have a team to lean on. And I would say kind of in the interim of doing that with the financial and legal side, the one part that I found is always kind of landing in the lap of the buyer is the operational side. So
operations,
no one's gonna come to save me there. All of that really falls on me at the end of the day, which has been nice. And thankfully, coming from kind of the real estate side of things, like any deal making process, there's bottlenecks and lag times, and you're putting stuff in other people's courts and waiting for a response. So during all of those kind of in between times, there's always something to do, and operations has really been that kind of fallback task while you're kind of waiting on other items to take place.
So let's pause real quick, because I know there's a lot of listeners out here who have never been into DD, or maybe they have been into DD and are just, trying to figure out what is supposed to be in DD. So from a legal side, it's very easy, right? You just had them look up make sure their licenses are correct, that they're in state, that their contracts are, they're assumable, that they don't have any kind of outstanding lawsuits or pending litigation on the books. Did you do anything outside of those kind of generalized legal searches?
Sure. And not to tangent away from that, but I will say the one thing I've learned about due diligence is it's 5 billion little things. So trying to wrap my head around okay, what are all of the many legal components? So anything outside of that, I'm thinking like insurance policy stuff. Definitely had to look through those.
Exactly. Contracts.
Exactly.
They just boom. Yep. So super easy. Yep. Shouldn't be that's not, you didn't get hung up there, right? Or
no,
did you?
No, I would say
no. Usually you don't. Yeah. So that makes sense. And then it's usually like a financial and operational is where the big hangups are. Financial, what was the extent of the DD? Because there's you can do two things with DD. The first one is essentially it's a bookkeeper who comes in and rebuilds their books from scratch. Like they take all of the information, all of the data, and they rebuild the books from scratch to make sure that they get the same things that they claimed on their tax returns. That's the easiest, biggest one. And then second, on the back end of that, a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll do quality of earnings. So as they're rebuilding the books, they'll look for things like, oh, this shouldn't be in here. This is somebody paid them for rental space in the back and they're counting that as income, but it's going to be other income. Or, hey, this was like a one-time big job that they haven't done again in 3 years. Like this is $1 million job out of their $1.8 million revenue. Like this is never going to happen again. You shouldn't buy based off this. Where did you stop due diligence, and what did you include in due diligence? And I guess that's a really good place to start.
And again, it's kind of hard because there's so many components and kind of subcomponents that go into a QOV, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say that we did a full recasting of the books, and that in itself just took a long time to get access to their QuickBooks file. They had gone through a few different bookkeepers in recent history as sellers and as business owners. So to try to get together the multiple pieces, some QuickBooks stuff was online, some was on desktop. So to get all of it compiled was its own journey. So once we had those, we did a full recasting of the books, and we're kind of in that quality of earnings stage now. And also what I realized, there's you throw out quality of earnings and it sounds like a pretty industry standard term, but there's a lot of different definitions that people hold. Some people see a quality of earnings, say $50,000 to $100,000, 30 to 60 page report that you're getting. Ours is not that formal, obviously. It's much more manageable, but you end up kind of doing all of these components of a technical QOV. So more like a QOV light, one that's more appropriate to the scale of our deal is what ends up happening. And so we're really in the thick of that now without getting into too much.
And that's something I definitely would recommend, like to anybody who is in a sub $5 million buying business, like purchase price. It's really, you just want QOV light, because you're right. I've seen documents that are like 250 pages, and I'm going, what are you doing? This is a $100,000 QOV on a $2 million company. I'm going, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But an accountant or a DD person will take your money if you want them to do that. So, QOV light surprisingly is actually an industry term. It feels like I've heard that a few times from DD people. Yeah, they say it's like a QOV light. Like we just really make sure there's nothing going on that doesn't make sense.
Sure,
but yeah.
We've really kind of naturally fallen into that process, and thankfully, the account that we're using does have M&A experience, and he's also been, with us on the real estate end for years, so there's a lot of continuity there. So when I brought up QED, he's like, not sure we want to do the full kit and caboodle here. So kind of nice to have him adjust expectations. But I'll say financially on that initial big recast we did based on the QuickBooks, things were looking pretty good. I would say from like an accrual standpoint, numbers were actually looking better than they initially reported, which my broker was like, "This is a rare and pleasant surprise." So
It's very, very rare.
yeah, that was great. But the balance sheet was kind of reflecting some issues that gave some pause, gave some questions. Nothing again, and I think that's the I'll get back to it, but the biggest thing in due diligence is separating out, for a post you had on LinkedIn, separating out messiness from deal killers and being able to discern between
Yeah.
the two. So getting back to balance sheet, yeah, there were some questions and concerns there, but nothing that, was sounding too big of alarms. And then the further we dug into it and kind of did some back and forth with questions and realized we really can't take this off the accrual basis. We're going to have to take this off the cash basis and analyze it there, which was painting a much less pretty story. And I think that kind of got us into the quality of earnings mindset that we're now in, because my CPA is much more used to businesses having cleaner books, and the sellers also know that their bookkeeping has been an issue. So I think that really having to pivot and go off bank statements and allow bank statements to lead the way, because those are, QuickBooks is a blank canvas that you can paint anything you want into. Bank statements are the bank statements. So getting that to really drive a true assessment of their earnings is currently really where we're at.
Awesome. And so, I mean, that sounds like a good place to stop with that and just say, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense why it took so long. Having to recast from accrual to cash. And then there's a plethora of reasons why. I mean, yeah, especially with like a longer cash flow cycle on when you're getting paid in B2B businesses, right? There's definitely different ways to look at it.
Sure.
And then so all that while this is going on, you're working with your accountant, you're working with the team, and then you're going through, like, I like to always dig into the operational DD, because you're 1,000% right. Like, that falls on you. There's nobody who's going to come and save you for ops DD, and there's no one who's going to ask the question. So I think the first place to start is, right, you go into ops DD with a bunch of questions. Where were you sourcing a lot of this information on what task? Because a lot of people don't even know what they don't know, right?
Me as well. And I will say, straight up, the thing that I realized is, initially feeling very much like a fish out of water there, I realized ops is actually something that I feel a strong suit in, because you can really bring your own kind of common sense and your own personality to the picture of, okay, what makes sense for me on how this business, again, not how it should run, because the sellers have been in this for much longer than I have. So, they know things definitely that I don't, but you're allowed to kind of put your own spin and flavor on things and use your own creative problem solving to the process, which has been honestly a lot of fun in a lot of ways. But as far as sourcing goes, ChatGPT has been fantastic. And I feel cheesy using that. I'm just being totally candid. It's been a great sounding board for that ops process, and kind of knowing what components to really dig in on, and also kind of where to set expectations as well. And again, it kind of goes back to your LinkedIn post about you're going to find a lot of messiness. These guys, whiteboard scheduling, stuff like that. You're like, all right, we got to do some change in here. And the one big thing operationally that gave me a lot of pause was the lack of margin tracking. And I think it's because the way I see it is steering a ship in the dark. If you're not able to track jobs and job margins individually, you're really not able to gauge performance. So not having a really locked in system was a bit of a concern. But also, when you're looking at a small business,
almost
that you have to,
nobody gets that.
Yeah, you got to have expectations, set accordingly. And a lot of the operational issues I kind of came across, I was like, all right, I can see a refinement and a remedy for this. And that's a big thing that the sellers are looking to me for. They're trying to do a franchise rollout and really want to use me as kind of a poster boy franchisee, and help them kind of refine a lot of their systems. Also coming from a franchise background myself. So that's a value I offer them, and the ample training, and having them as a franchisor. And I know that you're a big fan of getting previous owners out sooner rather than later. I really like to lean into that relationship, or you've done this more than me. I intend to really leverage and lean into that relationship. So it's worked well for
I mean,
that we have.
it's definitely an interesting relationship, right? Because I wouldn't say that's the typical owner stay in relationship
Yeah.
where they're bringing you in and then they're looking to you for advice on growth perspectives, right? Most owners that you deal with, if you take over the business, you're looking to them for, information on how to grow and how to run this business. That's the reason why you leave the owner on. But what you find is, once again, in a smaller, lower middle market, especially, like if you're buying a $1.5 million business, there's a reason that they're a $1.5 million business and not a 10.5 or a 15 million or 20 million. It's because they haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
And so leaving the owners on in this instance is, I'd say, the 1% time where it actually, I still don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah.
But it definitely makes more sense than kind of the other way to do it.
Well, especially because they're going to continue to stay on as a franchise, or they're not going anywhere regardless, and so that definitely changes the dynamic for sure. But I would say that we've talked about that a lot, operationally speaking. When I kind of look at certain things, I'm like, guys, this has kind of got to get buffed up a little bit, and they've always been so respected. And they say, Chris, listen, like, that's what we're looking to you for. And when it comes to which hoses or which nozzles we use in the pressure washer, we hope that you would defer to us, because that's really a little bit more of our expertise. I said,
Yeah,
I am not here to tell you guys the ins and outs of how to pressure wash a property. I'm looking to you guys for that. But as far as refining systems, yeah, I have got some ideas, and they've been more than supportive, to help me plan on how to execute those.
Yeah, because I mean, what we typically see, and that makes sense, right? That logically makes sense. That in the when you zoom out, where it doesn't make sense is, hey, Chris comes in, says, hey, we need to actually raise prices a little bit because you guys, you're missing your gross margin, right? You guys don't track gross margin. You're missing your gross margin. Let me change your prices. And what you see a lot of times is owners push back, say, hey, we can't sell it for that. We're never going to make money, or we can't do that. We can't do this kind of job. We can't change like this. We can't up the price. And that's where you actually get the biggest pushback and the hardest. Yeah. Or they'll say yes, and then they'll sneakily undercut you on the backside. They'll go to jobs and not sell them because they don't believe in your pricing structure. So like when you're saying, hey, they're letting me own that part, but in terms of expertise on actual pressure washing and the equipment and everything like that, we expect that you utilize us as for our expertise. Like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like that's not a relationship that bugs me. It always comes back to like the owners are working for the old owners are working for the buyer, and then they just don't like the buyer's decision. But if you're working with them from like hey, we are going to be the franchisor, you're the franchisee, you can run your business how you want. Though there's going to be some, guardrails from a franchise or perspective.
And I think the dynamic you just laid out is something that they had with a previous buyer who was and that's why I think why the previous buyer did not work out, is because he was trying to do a classic PE roll up by a tree trimming business, a landscaping business. This was his pressure washing business. And the sellers told us, like, yeah, he wanted us to basically work for him, and that wasn't going to work. And I'm like, hey, listen, I get it. But as far as kind of the operational components go, yeah, I'm looking to them for all the technicals on how to pressure wash. But when it comes to just ops system refinement, again, they've got a good model, but what they don't have is a system, and especially not a system that's going to be repeatable at scale, which they're looking to do is, via the franchise rollout. So they're looking to me to help deliver them a system that's repeatable at scale. So again, a lot of really good synergy on that front.
If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know that we've been big fans of Service Scalers. One of the things that they just dropped that we are really excited about is a pay-per-lead program. So what they help you do is they help you directly gain access to leads and scale up your lead partner program. Go to servicescalers.com and say we sent you.
So was there anything you found surprising in your ops due diligence?
I mean, and that's the thing is, it's the deeper you dig, the more dirt you find. There's always kind of something around the corner of,
True.
it's like, all right, I would see the whiteboard, I'm like, all right, but like what actual like, tech systems do we have for scheduling? And they're like, like, oh boy, okay, so that's what we're working off of. And I think that, I think project management software, stuff like that. And I think how, and I get it. They're, again, generationally speaking, and I'm also a little bit of a boomer at heart when it comes to tech too, so I get it. But I think that how fragmented things were, and how so many ops components live in a different silo, and me seeing like, man, I figured as non-tech people, it would have just been easier for you guys on the front end to just, consolidate a lot of this, which hasn't been done. And we've kind of talked about this in the past of, for example, don't buy a business without a marketing component and see that, oh, well, if I just add marketing and flip it on, then it's this huge value add opportunity. But per the post you made that I keep referencing, there is kind of messiness and ops deficiencies that you can look at and see an easy tweak there. Okay, if I can take these different operational components, consolidate them in, some kind of project management software, link the QuickBooks to that, get my bookkeeper access to that QuickBooks, to that project management software. I think that I see so much bandwidth being created there. So, I would say that the fragmentation surprised me a little bit, but again, that comes with some opportunity that I'm seeing there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's opportunity, but it's also costs, right?
Sure.
And that's where the big thing is. Like, you have to buy the software, the license to software. Somebody has to build it. It might be you, it might be somebody else. Like, there's so much there to do. Yes, opportunity, and that's what you keep referencing, is the messiness is the opportunity, right? If you buy a house and the house is, somewhat brand new, you buy it, you sit on it for 6 months, and then you sell it, you might make a little bit on appreciation. You might not, who knows? But if you buy a fixer and you do everything yourself, and you get in there and you grind and you paint and you fix the kitchen and you change out the toilets and do the AC yourself, like, by the end of it, yeah, you're going to make money on that flip, but you also grinded for 6 months fixing it up. And then you just have to make sure, like, the point of due diligence, which I think you're doing an absolutely fantastic job on. The point of due diligence is making sure that you don't have termites or structural damage.
Yes.
Like, making sure that it's not a sinking ship that you're buying, that it's not completely destroyed. It doesn't have holes in it. Like, it's going to run. You just need to paint the walls.
100%.
So,
and that's something where I think that the emotional attachment I've had to this deal has ended up becoming a good thing. And I've gone through so much in due diligence that with that emotional attachment roller coaster, that I've kind of backed off, and I'm at a point of, I'm kind of comfortable anyway. The wave breaks on me at this point, which is good. But I think up front, again, on episode 1, we described my perfect business. It sounded exactly like what I have in front of me. And so I've seen potential in it the whole way along, and it's helped me discern operational issues that, again, do have refinements in place. And I do want to get back to the opportunity cost there, because you make a good point, and there is a plan for that. But it's helped me really go through this process and give this deal every possible chance to win. And if it dies, it'll die on sound data and logic, not emotion. But if it was a deal that I was a little less in love with, there might have been a few off ramps I would have taken earlier in the deal, and not gotten quite as much experience, and not ended up with all the knowledge I've gained up to this point, which has been significant. But back to the opportunity cost.
Yeah.
You mentioned a very good point there. Part of my earnout, and we talked about this coming off the bottom line, is I'm bringing in an ops manager that's going to help me with a lot of these different components as well.
Dude.
And
sorry, I'm laughing because, like, that, remember I said, hey, I'm going to surprise you with a question.
Yeah.
And I was actually going to ask about that. I saw you post, and I was like, dude, this dude is ahead of his schedule. He's already looking for an ops manager even before close.
Yeah.
Like, that's I highly recommend it in this specific case.
Well,
But yeah, sorry, I
and
didn't
what's
mean to cut you
nice
off. I
is
just got really
when
excited.
I sat down and told them, hey, listen, the earnet's going to come off my bottom line. And oh, by the way, part of what's coming up above that bottom line is I'll be expensing my new ops manager salary and I'll be expensing my debt service through the business before it hits my bottom line. Once all that's, all those expenses, what's already there, plus my ops manager salary and my debt service, once that's all paid for, I get paid my income cap, and then you guys take the overage. So it's been nice to kind of have that salary already accounted for, kind of in the books, and being able to kind of factor that in. And then, yeah, I kind of reached out within personal network and a few guys I knew that would be solid. And it's not a rocket scientist of what we need. We need someone who can, again, streamline a few different platforms, stuff that isn't out of the wheelhouse for some people that I knew personally. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. Had a prior military buddy who was a scout sniper who also has service background, who would have just been like chef's kiss perfect, but he's got a pregnant wife. He lives up in the Midwest. Transitioning just wasn't in the cards. So threw it out on LinkedIn thinking, who the heck knows what I'm going to get? I thought I wasn't going to get much traction, but you get a lot. You get a lot of applicants.
Right.
Ended up finding an Army vet. And I promise I'm not specific to military vets, even though that's what it sounds like. But he ended up just being a fantastic fit, as well as a short list of a few others that are really, really interested, young, hungry, excited for the scaling opportunities that come along with this. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident. I'm much more confident than I was a month and a half ago on the ops manager front. So, exciting stuff.
Neat. No, I mean, like I said, it's really smart to get started ahead of time. I think I've told a half dozen people to, even if you're high, and it comes from trauma, a place of complete trauma. If like you're buying a business, you might want to post before you actually close on the business, because everybody could leave on you day one, and then you'd be stuck just having to do the work yourself.
Yeah.
So I always said, hey, if you're buying a small business, like 1, 2, 3, 4 trucks, and you're worried about the team in any way, shape, or form, post. It's free.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Throwing that up on LinkedIn was free.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get to do two things, you get to see what the market's like for replacement, but also you get to be ready day one.
Yeah.
Ready day one with somebody that you hired, who's your team. And bring them in and start, having someone to soundboard off of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say this is a bit of a different dynamic with the ops manager, because they do already have an ops manager in the business currently that, whose salary is accounted for, but he's really more of like a field ops manager, which is great. And I've gotten to talk with him.
Yeah, daily ops.
Yeah, I've gotten to spend a lot of time with him, make sure he's very on board. We get along great, so I feel confident there. Again, if I had to replace him on day one, which I'm not planning on having to do, but I'm prepared for that situation. But the ops manager I'm looking for is really more the back of house kind of systems manager to kind of bring in to help me, just get my arms around the business and get it stabilized as a brand spanking new owner on day one. And then B, to have a second set of hands really help out with a lot of that opportunity cost of implementing new systems like we talked about earlier.
Sweet. So what's the last bit of timeline before, I don't want to say shit or get off the pot, but what's the next upcoming timeline look like?
Yeah, we kind of all had a pretty, I wouldn't say intense. I mean, it was fine, but it was a bit of a come to Jesus moment. When again, things we were going through, accrual numbers looked good. I'm like, all right, looks like, everything's fine on this front. But when the balance sheet questions really couldn't get answered sufficiently, we're like, hey, listen, we're having to go off the cash basis numbers now. And based on the cash basis numbers and some other customer list things that we uncovered, and I'm trying to be sensitive of confidentiality, but
discrepancies.
Yeah, some discrepancies that came up. And their broker, my broker, everyone was on board about the reductions that came about from those discrepancies. But I'm like, hey, when you put these discrepancies and the cash basis numbers together, and you take our original multiple that we had going to LOI, so I'm not changing the multiple on you guys, same exact thing, but when we're basing it off this earning number, we're getting this as a purchase price. And you're like, yeah, that's not going to work for us. I'm like, I don't blame you. It wouldn't work for me either. but there's two ways to get the purchase price back closer to what we had at LOI. And that is the customer list discrepancies, which doesn't look like we're going to be able to fix, or we can work on the balance sheet and try to get your books cleaned up and get that cash basis number looking closer to that accrual number. And the closer it gets, the more we'll be able to offer. So that's, again, where we're at now and trying to get that number through the bank statements. And so and I should have that answer, like, I think next week early. So once we get that number, I'll apply again that original multiple and say, based on the most accurate assessment of earnings we can possibly get at this point, this is the multiple that's the same. This is the purchase price based off of it. And it'll either work for them or it won't. And the good news is if it works for them, it's going to work for me and work for my lender. It's really on whether we can justify a high enough price it's going to work for them at this point.
Yeah, definitely. Because, I mean, it's a common thing you see, and it's unfortunate, but, right, you get into the brass tacks and it's not actual, and you take it and say, hey, we are paying you based on a earnings that you claimed, and you didn't actually earn that. So we can't actually pay you. It's one of the few real ways, in my opinion, that you can retrade. There's a lot of people who retrade businesses, and it can come off sleazy. But there are a few real circumstances where you need to, and this is definitely one of them.
And it's
or back out.
It's
like,
not. Exactly.
We had a.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
We had a customer. Yeah, we had a customer issue as well on one of ours that we just backed out of the deal completely, and it essentially was they had a 14,000 person customer list, which is what we were basing some of the value off of. And then all of a sudden, when we go to ask about the customer list, there's no more phone numbers or emails associated with the customer list. So how do you reach out to an outbound to customers where you don't have their data? So there's obviously things now with AI where you can scrape, and there was things that you could scrape, but the monetary value that you had to put into, and the time and the opportunity cost again to actually grab that data, once again makes it so much less less valuable.
And I really wish I could get into the details of this customer list discrepancy, because
we'll do it after.
It's fantastic content. But so I think what's helped kind of with that retrade dynamic is, again, keeping the same multiple. It's like, guys, I'm not changing the deal on you. And again, after all I've seen, could I justify lowering the multiple? Yeah, probably. But that's not my intention. I'm not trying to be sleazy about it. I'm willing to keep the exact same multiple, but the earnings number has changed. And I think this is probably not unique to my deal, but as far as that number changing, I don't think anything of that was nefarious. I think it's their own sloppy books and them not having transparency on their own numbers. So and that's been another...
What I do...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, what I do want to touch on, though, is I do want to say, obviously it's everybody's deal. Like it's your deal, Chris. Do what you want. I will say, though, that I'm not above changing the multiple.
Sure.
Because and I just want people to be very clear, like, change multiple, change terms, get creative, because if you are, once again, if the business is worth the risk that you have to take, like one of the mitigations of risk is the price point. Like, there's two mitigations. I'll say it to the cows come home. There's price and due diligence. And so that's the way to mitigate risk. And if you found issues in due diligence, then you mitigate on price. And it sounds like you're doing that. I just want to be clear, like, if you're paying like for 6x on something that and this is super hypothetical, I'm paying 6x for $1 million in EBITDA, and it's 100% residential is what they tell you. Then you run into this customer and you go, hey, like 3 of your customers are property managers. Yes, they're residential units, but 40% of your work is actually commercial. Like, that's a multifamily is considered commercial HVAC. I would change multiple. Like, I'm not giving you a 6x. Even though the revenue stayed the same, right? The revenue is still the same. You still made the same. But I know that, hey, if I lose one of that customer concentration, or they get a new manager, whatever it takes, that, there's a chance that is significantly reduced. So it's not worth as much. So I'm going to adjust my risk profile by saying, hey, it's a 4x now, or a 5x or whatever. But I just want to be super clear, like, You know, in your case, it sounds like it's a good play.
Yeah.
That's probably what I would do,
And then,
especially on a lower multiple. If you're sitting at, I don't know what you paid, but if you're sitting at like a 2 or a 3, like, you know, why try to,
south.
yeah,
South,
exactly.
southbound. Yeah.
Even if it's lower,
Yeah.
if it's like a 1.8, like, what are you going to go to? Like a 1.2?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't think that's the place, the hill to die on,
Yeah. No.
especially if the deal fits.
Again, and I looked at my multiple. I'm like, I feel like my multiple's already, and I wouldn't say low. You know, I think that from my research, pressure washing businesses trade at a lower multiple than HVAC or plumbing. So it doesn't seem like I'm low for my industry by any means, but for the level of sophistication they have as a business, which, as I mentioned, like does have its imperfections, but from based on what I'm seeing, I'm like, I wouldn't feel right justifying a much lower multiple than what I currently have. I think that the multiple is perfectly set to where it allows a make or break based on that multiple. If the earnings are enough to get to a price that's going to satisfy them, it's going to satisfy me and my lender as well. So I'm pretty comfy with that at this point. So
Sweet. So timeline is next week ish, maybe some back and forth. So maybe 2 weeks out on that. And then everything else is ready to close post that. You're pretty good if it clears DD.
Yeah, pretty
Or do you
much.
still have quite a bit of
You
work
know, and
behind it?
and this might sound a bit crazy. We've held APA back this whole time because rather than getting APA across and then retrading on it, I was kind of like, let me just get the earnings and the purchase price hammered out, both agree on that, and once that's finalized, APA really flows a lot smoother from there. And so, so I would say, I mean, there's definitely still probably going to be some hurdles to get over through that. Again, this being a franchise deal, there's, FDDs and a lot of that legal stuff to go through. So, definitely want to account and bake in for that. But the good news is, since there's a lot of synergy there, I feel like I got a lot of leeway and a lot of leverage and pull for how I want to kind of structure that dynamic from a contractual standpoint. So again, I don't want to say like, oh yeah, once this is hammered out, we're going to close in like a week or two. Like it's still going to be a road, but yeah, mostly smooth sailing is what I'm seeing from here. If numbers.
Chris, I'm so pumped for you. Like I'm so happy right now, mostly because like Chris, if you go and listen, I'm going to go and listen to it actually myself, but I feel like Chris Barr day one and Chris Barr today are like vastly different people.
Yeah.
Like just like from a knowledge standpoint of view, just like the terminology and understanding the systems and the processes and behind, like I knew you were a smart guy doing commercial real estate and franchise and everything before, but it still was like new to you. And then now you're just like, boo, 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 boo.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's wild because it is like that. You're one of the few people who just went out there and just did it. I mean, obviously you sought out the podcast, you sought out some good mentors around you who helped you learn a lot. I haven't talked to you in 2 months, so it wasn't me, but through the due diligence process, you learned a ton about like what you should be looking at, the pillars of due diligence, like all this crazy stuff. So, I mean, man, I'm really excited for you. I hope this deal goes through because, you've earned it.
Thanks. And I hope so too. I really do. And based on what else I've seen in the market, because that's been the other hard thing. One of my mentors, like, don't totally let off the search gas. Like, continue to see what else is out there. God forbid if you have to pivot. I have not been great about that. Due diligence has sucked a lot of bandwidth. But from what the little bits I've seen, I still like what I have much better than anything else I've seen out there. So I really hope it closes too. And it's, but as far as the learning process, yeah. And for the audience out there, like, yes, remarkable growth has taken place. It has not been without blood, sweat, tears. There's been breakdowns. there's been everything.
Welcome to small business
100%.
ownership.
And I knew that going into it, the baptism of fire I'd get. And I'll also say, and we've kind of talked about some shifts in the team, had to switch attorneys mid-process, which wasn't perfect, but because so much was being done on the financial and operational front, it wasn't a huge deal to switch attorneys at that point because we hadn't gotten that far along. And also my accountant, who has been great and has been with us and has M&A experience, but there was definitely a few stutter steps in regards to process and kind of, again, proactively kind of taking initiative to get docs, kind of, it's more procedural stuff. But
Yeah.
if I would have had a hotshot M&A pro strictly guy that came along and did this, he would have plopped a QE light in my lap. I would have looked at it and I would have said, okay, looks like this to me. And having to really walk hand in hand with my accountant, both him walking hand in hand to teach me what the heck I'm looking at and articulate it and translate to me, and to kind of have to walk him hand in hand, say, no, this is exactly what I need from you. I think that that's where a lot of learning took place. So it was even in those very imperfect.
I'm not going to recommend that same methodology for everybody, but I'm glad it worked for you.
I wouldn't either. If I had it to do over again, would I have got somebody different? Maybe, but I love how it has turned out and how it's worked out, because A, he's fully capable enough to do this, and B, the few gaps there were along the way equated in to me having the knowledge that I have today, and I wouldn't have done nearly as much learning without that. So it's all kind of worked out so far, man. So we'll see where it goes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'd like to take a second. I know we're talking about team. This is kind of off the cuff, but just a huge shout out. I know you didn't use them. I use them now personally. So big shout out to a few of our sponsors here at the podcast. Apple Tree. I didn't use them for DD, but I do use them for accounting, and they have blown my mind. So I know you have an accountant, but for anyone else out there who doesn't or is unhappy with their accountant, please give Patrick a call. I almost cried today when I got my books in because they were so good. I had 3 years of bad books, and I have one 6-month period that they gave me of good books, and I swear I almost shed a tear because I was, like you said earlier, like in the dark trying to steer the ship, but really it was just doing everything manually, which sucked.
Yeah.
So super pumped about them. For SBA, Alan Peterson at First Internet Bank has been an absolutely phenomenal resource. He is the guy to go to for SBA anything. I don't think you're doing SBA, right? No. So if you do SBA, Alan Peterson, alanfib.com. And then we're bringing on some more cool sponsors. We're trying to round out this team of like acquisition in a box. Like if you wanted to listen to the show, here are like people that we trust and that I actually use. Like John also uses Apple Tree. So it's a really good group that we're trying to put together, not just, any Joe Schmo. But dude, I'm pumped. I think we circle back in a few weeks when you're done with due diligence and you're just like, I'm just filling out paperwork to close, Jack.
Yeah.
No big deals. And then close, and then the real hard ship starts. But this is a good example of SMB in general. I'm not going to go on a big tangent here, but it is. It's like bob and weave, deal with the situation, figure it out and go. And if you can't do this, you're not meant for it. So for everyone out there, this is a typical journey. This is what's going to happen to you. You're going to get in, you're going to find something, you're going to retrade, you're going to figure something out. It's going to work, it's not going to work, and then you're going to go try again.
Yep.
Like that's who makes it over anybody else. So super excited. Thank you for sharing, Chris, your story. I'm happy to see you again. I'm happy you're still, I thought you ghosted me. I thought he left. He's no longer in doing this anymore. He's gone.
No,
we didn't talk for 2 months. I thought he was just like, screw small businesses. I'm out of here.
No, still here. Just in my
just
own
busy.
In my own vortex of coffee and Zen, just trying to get through the day. Man. So no, we're still here, man. Absolutely. No, appreciate you having me as always.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you to all our listeners. If you like what you heard today, leave us a comment, like, subscribe, follow, continue listening, whatever, share with some people. And I think, knock on wood, actually, I'm not even going to say it.
Yep.
I'm excited to see Chris Barr's journey, and we'll see you next week.